Okay, so once again, welcome everyone to our session on Angular. It's been a very long time since we all met up, at least virtually. I think this is the first time they're meeting up after like last year. Just to give a quick intro on what we do before we jump into the session, I'm pretty sure all of you guys are very well interested in knowing or learning Angular or like getting started with it as well. So Sri Lanka is like the official Angular community of Sri Lanka. We started way back in 2019 when we did the first ever Angular conference in Sri Lanka. I'm pretty sure most of you guys might have joined. Sadly, my lower part is not showing, but I'm actually wearing the Sri Lanka conference t-shirt that's there. It'll be very inappropriate if I just stand up and show it, but take my word for it, I'm actually wearing it. It's always a pleasure like seeing people like wearing the t-shirt just brings back memories from all those times. So after the Angular conference or NGConf, we actually did a couple of meetups and we did some competitions as well. But we have been a bit dormant, or like at least the community has been active, but in terms of initiatives that we have been a bit dormant. But to actually break the ice and actually end the year with style, we are actually in collaboration with Ascentic. We're actually bringing you guys like a comprehensive set of Angular workshops. So the whole idea of it is just to rekindle the community back again and see whether we can kickstart things going up. Apart from that, we also want like it's the whole web technology space is like evolving. Like every other day there are new frameworks coming, but never to forget the ones that's been starting for a long time. So we thought, why not actually start off by giving like a quick intro to what Angular is. Like I'm pretty sure you guys have registered by seeing the post on our Facebook page, and you might have noticed this is one of other 10 more sessions that's going to go. So the whole idea is to see whether we can teach you guys in collaboration with Ascentic to see if we can like get you guys started with Angular and also give an intro to how things are and how you can build production grade applications. Everyone just can follow up tutorials and learn Angular, but there's always like the correct way of implementing anything, any technology for that matter. So keeping that in mind, all the 10 meetups or the workshops per se are structured in a way that actually takes a beginner, gets the intro, tells them, teaches them the concepts on how to apply the concepts, and eventually get to a place where you can actually write production grade Angular, as well as how you can use technology like the Angular tools and also start debugging it. I'm pretty sure writing test might not be the first thought in everyone's mind, but we'll be actually doing that as well. So actually to kick things off and actually give you the whole intro to Angular, how we would like to call it, give you the hello world to Angular, or like the hello Angular. We have Mr. Indunil and Ms. Dinushika with us from Ascentic joining to actually give you guys that intro. So just to give before I actually hand it over to the speakers, let me actually give an intro to them. So Mr. Indunil is the senior tech lead of Ascentic. He's been in the industry for the past 15 years. He's been working around and messing around with various technologies in front end, as well as he's also very proficient in .NET as well. And we have Miss Dinushika, who's like a full stack developer. She's also a veteran and has been in the industry for the past 7 years. She has worked with multiple front-end technologies, including Angular, and she is currently the associate tech lead at Ascentic as well. So before I hand it over to them, one more thing. I'm pretty sure most of you guys who are fairly new or have some questions for the speakers might want to raise some questions. So as a housekeeping, if you want to ask any questions, please raise your hand. There'll be a session allocated just to cater to Q&A. Raise your hand and one of the moderators will give you the opportunity to ask your question. You can either use a voice chat, you can use voice, or you can use the chat. Without taking too much of time, or it took 5 minutes from your precious time, let me actually hand it over to the speakers to continue the session.
Thank you, Midushan. So let's start. Good evening, everyone. So today is the first session of the series Angular 0 to 100 in 10 sessions. This will be a beginner's guide. So I hope you will enjoy the session and learn something new from it. So let's start. First of all, let's look at our agenda for today. At the first half of the session, I'll be giving a small introduction on Angular, like what is Angular, why to use Angular, and I'll be giving small introduction to Angular CLI as well, and we'll talk a little bit about history of Angular, and then finally a little bit about TypeScript and NPM as well. So basically I'll be covering the most boring theoretical stuff. Then Idunil will demonstrate you creating an actual Angular application, and he'll be setting up the project using Angular CLI. He'll be describing you the structure of the project, and he'll be showcasing you the basic principles like two-way binding, and finally he'll develop a simple to-do list. So at the end of the session, you'll have time for questions as well. So let's start. What is Angular? I took this definition from Angular's own website. So according to them, Angular is an application design framework and development platform for creating efficient and sophisticated single-page applications. In simple terms, Angular is a front-end framework that is used to create single-page applications. So let me explain it a bit more. I hope you all had some kind of experience creating a simple web application or a simple website or even a simple web page using pure JavaScript and HTML, right? So it's 100% possible. But problem when it comes to JavaScript is JavaScript interacting with DOM element, that means user interfaces, there's a bit of heavy lifting. So if your project grows by the time, if your project has a bit more logics, you will end up writing so much code, and it'll be really hard to maintain your code, and it'll be really hard to test. If there are bugs or errors, it'll be really hard to find them. So basically within 2 or 3 months, you will find it hard to read your own code. So that's the problem with JavaScript. So next best things close to JavaScript is jQuery. I hope you all have some kind of idea on jQuery. So Angular is way more advanced than JavaScript and jQuery both. So in simple terms, Angular is a front-end framework that is used to create a small, medium, even enterprise level applications. So I hope that details about Angular is clear. So let's move on. What about the main characteristics of Angular? So there are a lot of characteristics in Angular, but we'll talk about main 3 maybe. So Angular is a component-based framework. Let's talk a little bit about components. Indunil will demonstrate you more regarding components and how to use them, but for now I'll give a brief introduction. So in programming, component is another language for section, another word for sections. Let's say you are building a system or a website, you can divide your website or a system into different sections. As an example in here, if this is your website, you have a navigation and you have a slider and you have a footer. So you can have multiple components for each of these elements. As an example, you can have a separate navigation component, you can have a separate slider component, you can have a separate footer component, likewise. So what's the advantage of having components? It's like this. So when you are having components, your code will be much more maintainable. It will be really easy to read your code, and it will be really easy to test your code. If there are bugs or errors, it will be really hard to it will be really easy to find them. Most importantly, you will be able to use component in multiple places. That means you don't have to write the same code again and again and again. As an example, let's say this slider you will be using in multiple pages in your website, then you don't have to write the same code for this slider in many pages. You can just write a simple slider component and reuse it in many different places. So that's one advantage of having components. So since Angular is a component based framework, it is ideal for creating scalable web applications. So the next one is Angular is a collection of well-integrated libraries. That means it has routings, forms management, client-server communication, and much more. So basically, if you are building an Angular application, it'll be really easy for you because you don't have to write everything from the scratch. The necessary items, or let's say elements or features that are required for creating basic Angular application is already pre-written by Angular. So you just have to use them. The next one is Angular has suite of developer tools that will help you develop, build, and even test and update your code. So Angular is not just a language, you'll have much more than it. So when we are talking about the tools, let's talk about Angular CLI, because Angular CLI may be the most important tool in Angular. So if I give you the introduction, Angular CLI is a command line interface tool that you use to initialize, develop, scaffold, and maintain Angular applications directly from a command shell. So in simple terms, Angular CLI will automate things that otherwise you have to write manually. As an example, let's say you want to create a brand new Angular application. Uh, Rather than just writing everything from the scratch, you can simply type this command ng-new and my app. This is the application name in your terminal, and Angular CLI will create a new project for you. Uh, Same like that, if you want to create a new component in your application, you can write this command ng gc and your component name, and CLI will build the new components for you. So basically, Indunil will, when he's demonstrating you working with the actual application, he'll use the Angular commands. So you will get a more understanding of how this how Angular CLI is working. But these are just some few example of commands, and there are much more commands. Basically, Angular CLI will help you to develop faster. So let's talk a little bit about why to choose Angular. As I explained earlier, Angular is a fully featured framework which include routing, HTTP, RxJS, and much more. So basically, Angular includes so many things so that you don't have to write everything from the scratch. And it is integrated with TypeScript. So in the coming slides, we'll talk a little bit more about TypeScript, and it supports dependency injection. Therefore, it's really easy to test, and it's one of popular framework for enterprise applications. As an example, uh, YouTube TV, Gmail, Netflix, and yeah, Upwork, like really popular applications are currently using Angular. And it supports by Google. So as you all know, Google is a giant in IT industry. So I can say Angular is reliable because the development team in Google will maintain Angular and they'll upgrade Angular. So it's kind of reliable. And most important advantage is Angular has a really large community. Therefore, it will be really easy to find any documentation, tutorials, and if you have any questions, you can post your questions in any threads, and there will be so many developers to answer that. So I guess this is a really good advantage if you are using Angular. So let's talk a little bit about history of Angular. Misiko Hevery, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So he's the inventor of Angular. He invented Angular JS, and then developer team in Google improved Angular and released more versions of Angular. And currently there are more than 1.7 million developers. Not only developers, there are library authors, there are content creators, and much more.
Dilishika, I would like to ask one more point here. There's one thing actually came into my mind while you explained these things, which is difference between Angular JS and Angular, because so many developers confused on that aspect. I mean, can you please just give me just a brief explanation on that?
Yes, really good question, Indulin. So let's talk a little bit about Angular versions. When someone says Angular JS and Angular, you just have to keep in mind is that those two are two different things. So Angular first came as Angular version 1, which we know Angular 1. It is known as Angular JS. After Angular 1, developers improved the Angular 1 and released the next versions like Angular 2, then Angular 3, Angular 4, and the current version is Angular 13. So Angular 2 to 13, all the Angular versions are known as just word Angular, and Angular 1 is known as Angular JS. So those are the two different versions of Angular. So let's talk a little bit more about the difference between Angular JS and Angular. So the main difference is the language. So Angular JS is based on JavaScript, while Angular is based on TypeScript. There are many more differences like app architecture, because Angular JS is a model views controller, that means MVC architecture based, and Angular is more like service and controller based architecture, and Angular JS is not built with mobile support, while Angular is so much mobile oriented, and there is a difference in routing, and there's a difference in data binding, and difference in testing and tools, like Angular JS use more third-party tools, while Angular is using command line interfaces. So basically there are many differences, but I will not go deep into these things, because since this is a beginner's course, if you are like really new to Angular, you might it will be a bit difficult to understand some terms, but in future sessions you will get more understanding about these terms, and you will learn much more about these differences. So basically what you have to keep in mind is Angular is just a much more improved version of Angular JS, and its language is different. Angular is based on TypeScript, while Angular JS is based on JavaScript. Angular has a better performance, better speed, and it's more flexible and more stable than Angular JS. So that's the main difference. Since we talk a little bit about Angular and TypeScript, since I mentioned earlier Angular is TypeScript based, let's talk a bit about TypeScript as well. So what is TypeScript? TypeScript is a strongly typed programming language that builds on JavaScript, giving you better tooling at any scale. So in simple terms, TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript that will eventually compile back into JavaScript. So I know it sounds a bit funny, but TypeScript is a way of writing JavaScript, and after compiling TypeScript, you'll again have just the familiar JavaScript code. So there are many advantages when you are using TypeScript. First one is it's type safe. Therefore, it's really easy to find errors. As an example, a study shows more than 15% JavaScript bugs, errors can be found just by using TypeScript. And it supports classes, and it supports modules, and it has a similarity with backend languages. So if you are a developer that is familiar with the backend languages, you will find it really easy to use TypeScript rather than JavaScript. And it has a built-in support for JavaScript packaging, and also it's really great with IDEs, like modern IDEs like Visual Studio Code or Atom. As an example, like features like IntelliSense work really well with TypeScript. So before going into the demonstration of the application, I would like to talk a little bit about NPM as well, because NPM plays a huge role in JavaScript ecosystem. So NPM is the world's largest software registry. So in simple terms, again, NPM is a collection of let's say open source and private packages. As an example, let's say you want to create a website or application using and you want to add a calendar, or you want to add a color picker, or you want to add a graph or something. So if you want to build a calendar or a graph, it will take really long time for you to build something like that from the scratch. But that's where npm comes to help. So if you want something like calendar, you can just go to npm registry and search for available calendars and use them in your project. So that's basically npm. So it has a lot of libraries that you can be used freely, and it also contains like private repositories as well that belongs to organizations. So that's about npm. I think from now on I'll hand over to Indunil. So he'll be demonstrating you more about like how to use Angular and how to build an application. So to you, Indunil.
Yeah, thank you, Dilashika. It was a really good high-level summary. So let's do something. Before I share my screen, firstly, actually, in order to build the Angular application, we need to install a couple of things as a prerequisite. So one thing is that you need to have a node installed in your computer. And once you install the node, so we need to install the Angular CLI. So just let me show you how it can be done. Okay. So as I mentioned before, firstly, you need to install Nodejs. So how you can do is like you have to go to this website. You can install, you can download this installer. I mean, it's dependent on your operating system you have in your computer. So you have a Windows installer, Mac OS installer. So it's just a matter of downloading the installer and install in your computer. So once you install it, so you can make sure which version you have installed. How you can do is you have to open up the command prompt like this way. I just clear this one. You need to type node and _ version. So you can make sure that which in the version you have installed. So in my case, it is 14.18. Right. So once you install the Node.js, you need to install the Angular CLI as a globally. So this is the command actually you have to use. It is npm and space install, and this is -g for the global, and this is the command for installing the CLI. Again, you can use the command prompt, and once you type this command and hit enter, it will install necessary dependencies for the Angular CLI. Again, once you install the Angular CLI, you can make sure the version you have installed in your computer. How you can do is you have to type ng _ version. Yeah, it will show you the current version. I mean the installed version of your Angular CLI. So in my case, it is 12.2. So I know that we have a latest version on it. So you can install the latest Angular CLI when you install in the Angular CLI. So I think once we install those two prerequisites, so we are good to go for the Angular application buildup. And so let me share the screen. Yeah. Before I dig into the code structure, I would like to show you the small thing actually what we are going to build up in this session. Hope you can see the screen on this one. So this is a kind of a daily to-do list we are going to develop. So basically, it's a very basic one. So you have a kind of a main component around that, and we are going to build up another two component kind of a one is for the text box and the button, and the other components for the list of things, the items you will be having here. So based on that, so we are going to exchange the data between component the 1 to 2, and we'll see how we can do it using the Angular the application inbuilt directives or other decorators. So yeah, as I mentioned before, I just told you like I have created the application up front. The reason I did it like actually so when you install, I mean the setting up the application, normally it will install the necessary dependencies, and also like the while I'm sharing the screen, it will like I mean get some stuck into our application. So that's why I have installed the application in here, set it up the application in here. But I'm going to show you what are the Angular CLI command, which in order to set it up the Angular application. So basically, you can use ng command, then space new for the new application, then space, and you can use the name of your Angular application. So in that case, I used demo. So that's why it's created the demo application in here. So therefore, it has created the folder structure as this. Okay. So before I actually my plan is to going through the folder structure and the specific the files and what are the basically the responsibilities of each and every file. But before I go into that, I would like to show you how it looked like, because this is a brand new application. In order to run the application, we have the Angular CLI command. I think Dilushika also presented some of the command in his presentation. So this is how we can run the application. Here also you have to use ng serve. That is actually, this is the Angular CLI command in order to run the application. But in order to open up the browser by default, I would use open like this. It will build up your application and it will open up the current behavior of your application. So make sure that this is the brand new application. I haven't done anything yet. You can see how it looks like at glance. Yeah, so this is the basic this is how it look like when you create your Angular application, and this is how it look like the home page content and etc. You can navigate into any kind of external links in here, so you can learn about more on things like this. Okay, and can anyone tell me, like, is this font size would be enough, or can you see us? Can you see all this font size, or do I need to maximize this one? What about you?
It'll be good if you can maximize a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. How about now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to show you some the folder structure. This is the by default folder structure when you create the Angular application. Firstly, I would like to go inside the main TS. So this is the entry point of your Angular application, and basically it contains the module. So in this case, we have the one single module at this moment, which is the app module. So so some of you may have kind of a doubt that how does the Angular application decide the main TS is the entry point of our application? Well, so this is kind of a thing, like even for each and any kind of application, we have a kind of a configuration file. So even if you take the MVC application, you have the web config or maybe kind of a JSON file configuration. In here also, we have a configuration file, which is called Angular JSON. It contains all of the configuration of this file. You can add anything into it, but and also like even if you have a kind of another staging environment, testing environment, everything you can change on this file. So I'm going to show you where it does the the mentioned main TS is the entry point of this application. Here you can see that the main TS, it's indicate that main TS is the entry point of this application, which means it has already set it up for us when you're building up your application. So that's why when you run the application, it's decided the main TS is the entry point of our application. And by the way, I would like to show you one thing. I remember that Dilushika also discussed about the TypeScript. So this is the kind of a TypeScript indication you can see, which is a .ts suffix. Kind of that is the normally the inbuilt the TypeScript project you will be seeing when you creating the Angular project. So this is the, as I explained, this is about the main TS file. And if I go inside the app module, again, I also like just mentioned about this is the only module as of now it contain in this application, which is the app module. And by the way, like you can have multiple modules in your application. So when you growing up your application into kind of a medium large scale, but you can have the multiple modules. But at this stage, we have only one module, which is the app module. For the moment, we have only the app component of this application. You don't have to worry about what is app component. I will, explain more about it when the time comes. So basically, we have a couple of properties in here. And one thing is that declaration, the array. And that's where you can register all of the component of your application. And other thing is the imports. You can you can import multiple modules into it. Again, like modules also, like I am going to show you again what kind of module we can import into it. And the providers array. So providers array in the sense like let's say we have a kind of a services in our application, which is the services kind of thing we use to consume the API calls. So you can add those services in here. And of course that we are going to bootstrap, the start up the application using app component file, which is indicated here. So this is the default structure of the application. As I mentioned before, this is a very brand new application. So let me go inside the app component. I'm just straight away go inside the TS file. Because that is the normally the code behind the file of your app component file. So as you can see inside the app folder, it has by default created 4 files as the app component HTML. And this is the source file, which is the style sheet of this application. So you can have the CSS, the less files or source file. When I generate this application, I just choose as a source file of the style sheet of this application. So that's why it's created this the extension as SCSS extension as a style sheet file. So and also like this one, actually I'm not going to talk about much detail into it because this is a kind of a testing the purpose file. So we have another separate session for this one in order to discuss how we can test the application. And of course, now I'm already in the TS file. So let me just explain some of the properties we have inside this the class. So we have imported the component from Angular core library, and we have this decorator, which is the component. So if you have a kind of a directive or something like that, you have the directive decorator, something like that. So inside the component, so we have main 3 properties. The one is the selector. So selector in the sense, it is the unique identifier of your the component. So this component you can specify anywhere in this application inside the HTML. I will show you where do we have this app component selector. So as I mentioned, this is the only component as this application right now. It has been added inside the HTML file. So this is the file where we generate all of our JavaScript, everything, and put it inside the app component file. Then it's showed as a selector in here. You can change it it doesn't really matter at all. You can change it. I mean, if you are going kind of the enterprise application, you can change your name, you can change your the kind of a selector name. It is really doesn't matter. But this is the kind of the default application structure. This is how it the registered as in the indexed HTML file. So right. So this is the template URL in the sense. So each and every the TS file, we have to bind the individual HTML file for the particular component. In this case, so the app component file has the app.component.html file. So that is what it has binded in here. And also, as I mentioned about the source style file, which is the one, it's the binded inside the style URL array. You can have multiple things, but at the moment, it has binded on the source file. So that is basically the binding. It happened, your HTML and the source file, everything. So once you have this one, it is like a pretty much you can render this the component into in anywhere in your application. I think I have already mentioned about where do we need to register this app component. Yeah, it should be inside the app module. It's already there, and also of course it is the bootstrapping of your application. Okay. I think I have covered like the app module and the component class and the index file and the main TS. So the rest of the things are pretty basic. Like if you have something like the static file, something like images or something in your application, you can include in here. And environment file, which is kind of a pretty advanced topic though. If you have a kind of a multiple the environment in order to host your application, you can maintain your environment files. And polyfills, of course, like it's basically used to in order to use this application to run in multiple browser compatibility. So that's why it's used the polyfill.ts. And another class I just wanted to mention here, that style.sars file, which is basically the main SARS file of this application in root level. Why I'm saying root level in the sense it's inside the src folder, so that this is the root level folder. So what we are going to normally put here is like basically maybe the materials, the style file, or maybe the Google fonts, or kind of the generic type of style sheets. We are going to put it in here. Not only the style sheet, we are writing some styles as well. I'm going to show you what are the things actually with this will be included. Okay. I think I have covered like pretty much of all the files in here. Okay, since I have run this application and this one, I would like to show you another thing. Let me give some more room to this code. Let me open up this app component. So this is where all the contents of this application is rendered here. I'm going to remove all of them. I just wanted to show you like how the updates happen whenever you update your app component file. Okay. I'm going to remove this toolbar and so I just delete pretty much everything. So you can see that it will automatically build your application and rendered as it is like in your application. Normally we call it as a hot reload of this kind of the mechanism. So it's available. I just wanted to show you how it happened in this application as well. So let me go and create a brand new component for you. First of all, I'm not going to use Angular CLI as such. I just wanted to show you how we can create the component manually. And just let me maximize this one. Okay, so normally how we can create a component manual is that, okay, let me create a folder and let me call as a test, and let's create a test dot component dot html, and the respective the ts file as well. Okay, and another thing, just I just wanted to emphasize that this is the Angular, the style guide has maintained this, the lowercase of this application. It's pretty much clear, and even you rather you grow up your application into the medium or kind of a large scale application. I'm also like a preferable to have it the simple case, the naming convention of this application, because it's more clear. And if you, maybe some people like it starting with the capital, the camel cases, but this would be kind of the clear for me. That's why I use the totally lowercase of the classes. And here actually I have created the manual, the component. So let's add some code in here. So let me import the component. I just wanted to just show you how it works when you manually create your component. Okay, I'm going to put those properties selector. I would call it as app test. Well, normally this is the prefix we mention in the when you creating app the component, that also mentioned in the Angular JSON file. Let me show you where it is. Here, the prefix of the application. You can change it whenever you want in your industry level application. Maybe you can use your kind of a domain name of your the application you are building up. But at this stage, this is called as app. So that's why I'm calling as an app as well. And so the dash test. So basically, it's kind of a unique way of identifying the component. And so I'm going to bind my HTML into it, and that's called template URL. Test component. Okay, so let me export this class. I would call as a test component. Yeah, it's pretty much it. So let me add some HTML into here. Let's say test component. So that has been added. The application also build up. So I'm going to use this selector inside the app component. So let's see what will happen when you use it. So, okay. Yeah. So basically, this is what I just wanted to tell you. Like, basically the way of showing the error in Angular application. I mean, in the past we had a kind of a very, the nightmare of finding the errors in AngularJS and Angular kind of the previous version. But now it has far more improved the way of showing the errors in the Angular application. So that means this component I just mentioned in the like a few minutes ago, every component has to be registered in the module. But what I have done is I just create this component, but I haven't registered anywhere any modules in this application. So that's why it gives me the error. You cannot identify this app test, the selector in our application when you're building up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this component and going to register in here. You have to give the path in here. So as I mentioned before, all the component has to be inside the declaration array. It is this component. Yeah, so once you define, once you register your component inside the modules, the error has been gone. So let's see how it rendered. Here we go. So it's normally render here, whatever the we are putting inside the test component HTML file. So here actually what I just emphasize here is we have manually added the component, but you can imagine like how many times I took on this one. It normally time consuming. So in order to avoid that one, actually we can use the Angular CLI command. So I will show you how to create the component using Angular commands, Angular CLI commands as well. That is much more faster, and you can, and also you don't have to worry about registering the components inside the modules as well. It will automatically happen when you create the component or other services, directive, everything by using Angular the CLI commands. For the moment, I'm going to delete this test folder. And also I'm going to remove this in here, and I'm going to remove it in here as well. Okay, yeah, let me show you again the screenshot. Yeah, this is the application now we are going to build up. So we have a main component. Actually, we can use the app component for this one. So, but and in addition to that, I'm going to create another two component. For the one component, it's having the text box and a button, and the my second component is having the list of item, which is entering from these items. When you click the add button, which will be accumulate all the list of the things in this component. So basically those two components, I'm going to name it as a task name component and the task list. So let's go and create those two components using Angular CLI. I'm going to open up another the PowerShell for this one. Okay. How do you create the Angular CLI command? How do you create the component using Angular CLI? Is that you have to type ng, and the longer name is generate, but you have the short name on it. It's G, and I'm going to create a component. So you can type component as such, but there's a short name on it. It's a C, and my component name I have already mentioned, which is going to be task name, task dash name. So once you hit enter, it will create the necessary folder for you. So it contains the mentioned 4 files: HTML, SAS, and the test file, and the TS file. Let's just imagine you want to create a component, but you don't want to have this folder in here. You just wanted to create the folder, sorry, the component in the same structure as the app folder in here. So in how do you use it is, how do you can create them is ng. I'm just creating a test component again. G for the generate, C for the component. Okay, task as a test name or something. If you don't want to have a folder within the component creation, just use the flat. So in that case, it won't create the folder for you. Just put it on, just throw it away inside this main folder structure itself. So as I mentioned, the component will be registered inside the app module. As you can see, the task name component also there, my test name component also there. But I'm not going to keep it in here. I'm just going to delete them. And okay, so we have another component we need to create. Let me clear this one. And another one is that the maintaining the list of items. So what I'm going to do is ng again, and for the generate for the G, the component for the component, and my component name is going to be task list. Yeah. So those two component has been created here. We have a selector by default, it has created, and the task name also has been created. So everything is fine. So I think I just, okay. One another thing is that, so in order to bring this this application kind of a style sheet, I have already set it up the style sheet step aside me, because I just wanted to save my time in order to speed up the coding the part. So what I'm going to do is I'm just grabbing some style sheet. Let me open up this style SAS. As I mentioned it just a few minutes ago, I'm going to paste this is the Google fonts I'm using, and also I just mentioning about the generic classes you can put, the body, the h2 tag, and etc. And also I have some styles in here as well. Let me grab them as well. And for the task name, and of course for the task list. Okay, I just use this the styles and in order to save our time. Okay, so I think we can just start the coding. So first of all, so let's do some the app component stuff. And I think we have some styles in here as well. I have set it up. Okay, and even though I have created the new PowerShell, my background node shell will be running background. So you can see that it has changed. Whenever you change something, it has the load the application, and it has changed some background color as well. I'm going to put an image on here because this is our company logo, and we have a class on it. Logo section, and I'm going to put an image. I'll see. Okay, I have inside the assets. Okay, so it's random here, and I'm going to have another the container in here. Let's say class header body. I'm going to put a header tag, h2 tag for this one, and I'm going to use tail to do this. I'm going to just apart from here, then we can see very easily. Okay, and now I'm going to do is now I'm going to do is like, okay, this is the main component which I explained before. So that means this is the main component. So inside that, I'm going to put task name component and the task list component. How I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this task name selector in here. I'm going to put inside. For that one, I'm going to create another div. And call we have a class name for it. I think task container. So I think we haven't done anything in here. Just make sure that everything is in place. For the task list component also, I'm going to create the container here, and for that one I'm going to call the class name as task list container. And for that one, I think we have a selector for this one, task list. Okay, so So everything has been actually, we have bring it up. So those things are the default. By default, when you create the component is being added here. So this is why it's showing the here. This is the task name works, and this is the task list work. So that is why it's showing in here. So what we are going to do is, so we are going to put some controls in here, and so let's say so what basically what we have is we had a label, um, we had a label, and we had a text box and a button. So the same thing I'm going to put it in here. Task name, and for the input controller, it's going to be a text, and we need to have a button as well. And type is going to be a button, and I have a class for it. I'm going to call this, the label of this button is going to be, let's say, add. So you can see that once you save the app, the particular HTML, it is automatically rendered everything here. Okay, I think we have just rendered the whatever the HTML in here, but we haven't done any code part yet. So let's add some stuff inside the task list component HTML as well. So I'm going to use ULLI. Let's say one or something. Then we have a class for here. Task list. Okay. Yeah. So this is how it works. Actually, we don't have anything the code in yet. So let's go and do some coding how it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to. So what will have basically what has to be done is like when you enter something and hit enter, and you have to add the particular item inside the list, the task list component. So how you have to do is, so you can do many ways. You can transfer the data between components in many ways. But what we are going to do is using input and output decorators. For that one, I'm going to use a variable here, the string variable called task name, which is going to be string. I'm going to initiate as an empty string. And okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind that the variable into this input variable. So I think Dilushika also mentioning about the two-way binding. It is one of the most popular the mechanism in Angular. How normally it happens is like how normally we have to declare it as the square bracket. Inside the square brackets, you have to put the parentheses, and inside that you have to put ng model. This is the way you have to define the two-way binding in Angular. So I'm going to put it, I'm going to assign my variable into it. So what will happen is whenever you type something, you can get the particular, the updated value into your maybe the component or anywhere else. So that is how the two-way binding happened. So the DOM element will be updated accordingly, which is I think one of the most popular the decorator actually we are having in Angular. So let me have that in advantage over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just trying to, yes, I'm just going to try take this the value, and I'm going to put a function on it. Click, let's say have a task. So I'm going to put this variable into here. So I'm going to define this function inside the task name component. string. Okay. So yeah, this is another thing actually. I already mentioned about, I think, when I'm beginning of this session. I'm going to show you some more modules into this one. As you have in here, you have the browser module, which is normally comes to the application by default. So here I have used the two-way binding of this Angular, which is ng module. In order to use the ng module, we need to import another import module, which is called the form module. So let me import that one. So you have to insert the all the modules inside the imports. Let me show you the console. Yeah, so that error has been gone. So that is, I just wanted to show you how it happened when you use the ng model, the two-way binding concept in here. So the necessary dependencies you need to import in order to make it work. So I have the variable in place. I have the function in order to take the particular item from the text box. I have declared in here as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, when you hit enter, I'm going to grab this item and put it inside some kind of I would say, okay, now this is the main component we have, and this is the other sub component we have it here. How we do, the way of retrieving the value is, when you add the click button, you need to take those the values into the upper components. That means your parent component. So one of the concept of taking the child data into the parent components is using output decorator. So I'm going to use output decorator here. And I'm going to use the output name as, let's say, at click something. And this is the event emitter. So my event emitter type is going to be the string. And it shows you some errors because I haven't imported those necessary dependencies from there. I think output is already there from the Angular/co library. So I'm going to put the event emitter from here as well. So what I have done is, I'm going to pass the particular value from child component into the parent components. That is why I use the output. So what I'm doing is, I'm just going to access it. So how you access it is, the page, whatever the variable or any kind of a method is, that using this dot, you can use add, and you have a special method called emit. So you can emit your particular whatever the values we are taking from the text box. In this case, task name. Okay. I think we have we have emit the particular value into the add click here. And what I'm going to do is, just let me expand this one to make you much bigger version. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to take that value from task name component into the app component file. How you are going to do is, you need to use your out emitter, which the name I use there is that at click. So you have to use the same name here, but that particular emitter, I'm going to use it through the function. The function name can be any name. Let's say add task name or something. So I'm going to pass the event in here. So I'm going to declare this function in here, and let's say task name. Of course, my task name will be the string. It could be a kind of an object, or maybe the kind of object array or anything, but at this stage it will be a string. Yeah, so let me add a console and show you how it works, whether it's working or not. So it's built successfully, and open the console. So let's add something in here. Let's say test or something. As you can see, the whatever the values we are adding from this component has been added into the output emitter, and that has been displayed in our parent component as a console value at this moment. So that is done. So we have, I mean, we saw like how we can use the output decorator. So now what we are going to do is, so now in this the main component, now we have the list of items we are taking from the our child component. What we have to do is we need to pass the values inside the task list component, which is again is going to be a child component. So app component is the parent one. This is the child component. How you pass the parent one into the child component is using input decorator. So from child to parent, we use output. Parent to child, we have to use input decorator. As I mentioned, there are many ways you can use. You can use services, observables, but I'm not going to cover them all because we have another session in coming months in order to show you how it works. But at this moment, we are covering the sort of a basic stuff. Okay. App component. What I'm going to do is say I'm going to declare a kind of array. It's going to be the string array. So going to I'm going to add those whatever the data being added from the team name. I'm going to add them into the team task name list array. So how I'm going to do is this again. I'm accessing the particular whatever the variables in my particular class task name list. I'm going to push them. Okay, so I have added into the array. Now I'm going to access this array and pass this array inside into the another child component, which is the task list component. How we can do is we have to put the square bracket in here. You can use task list, task list. It can be any name. So I'm going to assign my task list array into the input decorator in here. So I have an input decorator in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to retrieve those value from task list component in here. Okay. So basically I'm going to declare a input name in here. So that the input name has to be same as this task list. It has to be imported from here, and it is going to be a string array, and this one. Okay, this has to be like this. I think this is pretty much it. So what will happen is we are passing, again, I'm saying like mentioning the same concept. We are passing parent data into the child component. In this case, this is the child component. So let's render something. I mentioned before I start this session, we are going to use inbuilt directives in Angular. So I'm going to use ng-for and ng-if. ng-for in the sense if you want to iterate some the array of things or list of things inside your HTML file, you can use ng-for. So that is what we are going to use. So let's push this one. And how we ng-for, I'm declaring a variable task of my array name is task list, and I'm going to have another index here. I will tell you why I'm going to use it. let's see this one. So what will happen is ng4 it's loop through the task list array and declare into the task. It's assigning into the task variable each and every item, and you can bind it in here. Either you can use any HTML tags or anything, but for the moment I'll just use this this one, which is called the string interpolation in Angular. You can use any calculation or any kind of a data binding here. Just wanted to show you how it works as well. Yeah. Okay, let's see how it works. As you can see, it will be keep on adding or kind of accumulating the list of items from this component to this component. So I think I just show you the number of item we are going to show it here. So that's why I just use index here. So in that case, what I can do is, again, I can use the string interpolation. As I mentioned, it can be used to calculation also. Like it's a very powerful the mechanism in Angular as well. So I'm going to use index and +1. It's incrementing one by one for the particular item. And also I'm going to use now you can see that it's just showing you the blank kind of a div with the gray area. I'm going to use another div here. If you don't have anything, any list items in your the array, I'm going to show you like no record found or something. Okay, for the moment, let's skip this way. As you can see, it is appearing on here. So let's add some values. Okay. So what will happen is it's keep on adding the things, but still I can see the the record found, the message it's there, it's intact, it's nothing happened. So I just want to do is if you have the kind of item in your list, I just wanted to get rid of this the error, but otherwise you need to keep the particular message as as such. So how you can do is it's a kind of a conditional directive you have to use. For that one, I'm going to use ngif. If what I'm going to do is I'm just trying to figure it out the length of this array. If the length of this array is 0 only, I mean in the sense like if you don't have anything in your array list, then just show the no record found. Otherwise, just hide this one. Let's say I have some daily scrum. So as you can see that no record found has disappeared whenever the item has added, and I have some the bug fixes like that. So it's keep on adding. Just a few things I just wanted to do, like I just wanted to clear it up this text box value when you add the item, otherwise it's keep on it's there in your text box as well. For that one, what I'm going to do is just clear it up the variable task, this one. I'm just, and also if you have the empty things, empty task name, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just returning the. So let's see how it works. Okay. So this is how actually it's worked. Like, so we have I think we have seen, I mean I know that it's really hard to cover it up all the things in Angular because we are having kind of very limited time. So in that case, I choose a very basic concept of the Angular. It's a kind of a decorators, which is one of the most powerful thing, input output. You can easily transfer your data into the parent, into the child components, and child components into the parent. And I use inbuilt directives, ngif and ng4 in here. Again, it's a very powerful one, and it's I mean when the Angular evolving the version into it, they are I mean, optimizing their other inbuilt directives much more faster, much more builder. So that is why actually this is one of the kind of the most popular JavaScript framework at the moment in the world. I think I know that there are a couple of JavaScript framework we are getting, I mean, one day by day, but this is it's still leading up front other than most of them. And also before I wrap it up everything, I just wanted to give a small suggestion into it. So I mean, what I just wanted to share the message is that so we, as I mentioned, we have a lot of like JavaScript frameworks and libraries in front, right? In day by day, we are getting a lot of JavaScript stuff. So I just want you to get the kind of a scenario and evaluate the particular framework, how it work for your the need basically. Rather than going for kind of the trendy. I mean, okay, if someone say, okay, this is good, this is not, this is bad. I mean, don't go on that way, because just validate yourself, pick the scenario and validate yourself. Then you decide this framework suit for this kind of scenarios. That other libraries will be suit for that kind of scenarios. So basically, validate yourself on that way. And what I'm have to say is the Angular framework is much improved framework, which is really suitable for the medium large application as it now. And lastly but not least, I just wanted to show you another web page, which is the Angular style guide. I think we can share it all. This is very useful when you are developing an enterprise application in your company, and it has really, I mean, everything in place. How do you need to structure your application? How do you need to naming your classes and everything? It's a very simple way of defining everything. I just recommending to go through everyone if you're starting the Angular in your company as a starters. I think that's pretty much it. It's over to you, Nodejs.
Thank you, Indonesia. It was a really great demonstration. So let me share my screen again. Yeah. So this is the end of our session. We completed the first session of the 10-part series, which is the introduction to Angular, and our next session will be on January. It will be about Angular components. As I mentioned earlier, Angular components plays a huge role in Angular. Even though like we have discussed a little bit about Angular components, even Indunil demonstrated to you about how to work with Angular components, there are many more interesting things to learn with when using Angular components. So if you are interested, we are inviting you to join. And regarding any other details related to these events or sessions, you can follow up Ng-Srilanka Facebook page or Ascentic Facebook page. And it's time for questions. So if you have any questions, you can just type your questions in the chat, or you can simply raise your hand. You will have a small raise hand icon in the Teams, so you can click on it, and Fiasa will unmute you so you can talk and ask the questions.
Hi guys, like wonderful session. Thank you for actually covering things up. I'm pretty sure this was like a very good introduction to see how you can most of like it was on the crash course flavor on what Angular is and how you can build an application out of it. So thank you very much for actually running us through that. There's actually two questions as of now that I can see on chat. So one is whether they can get the project for this, what was demoed.
Yes, I think we are supposed to share the repository, GitHub repository with them. I think they can access it.
So we'll actually have we'll get the code and we'll have the repository and we'll share the repo on our page. Or if you want the repo, you can message us as well. It'll be on the official Ng-Srilanka GitHub page. In terms of the recording, yes, the recording will be eventually published, and you can have a watch of it again.
And most probably all the links related to the session you will be receiving via an email. So don't worry about it.
So guys, if you have any questions, do put it up on chat. You don't have to be shy to ask. You can just use the chat. No worries on that. So there's one question that just came up. So it actually reads as, what are the types we have to value binding other than interpolation? There's actually two questions. Let's actually answer that. And also there's another question that says, what are form groups and form controls?
Yeah, the form controls and form groups are actually we are using for the kind of a Ng form level. So it is a kind of a static or the binding. It's a kind of advancing topic we are covering up on maybe the later sessions. So you will have more in detail of form group and form control and that aspect. And another one is that what are the times we have to value binding other than, okay, so I think we use the two-way binding mechanism. I think I have just demonstrated how we can bind the value into a particular controls. And those two interpolate and the string interpolation is another way. So I think those two will be we can use for in order to bind the value into the controls.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was on mute. I didn't know that. Thank you very much. So what I wanted to actually ask was, so there's like multiple technologies that's available. Like I'm pretty sure you guys mentioned that there's like a lot of technologies that you have worked with. What makes you like Angular more than all the others?
Yeah, I think I mean, just before end up the session, also just that's the main thing. I just wanted to emphasize that I just want them, I mean, everyone to evaluate their self, which is the best one for them, because there is nothing in the world like this is the best for you and such. So I would say, okay, community wise, it's the evidence and everything on the internet, like the React.js or something like that, it's on top. But you have to evaluate yourself what is the best JavaScript framework or any kind of library it's suit for your company or kind of a suit for your scenario. So in that case, that is my answer or kind of a suggestion I would like to give. So just evaluate yourself how this works, just rather than using the hello world, just use some kind of very simple scenario and just try it out how it work for you.
Let me add few things for that. So when it comes to choosing the best framework for front-end projects, so that's a question like we are getting frequently asked. So when it comes to Angular, the best competitor for Angular is React.js. So if you want to select a front-end framework, so the name is in there like Angular is a framework and React is a library, but there is nothing that you can do in Angular that cannot do in React, the vice versa. React can do anything that Angular can also do. So what my suggestion is, if you are planning to become a front-end developer, don't be biased for any technology. Just try to learn both, and maybe you'll find like you'll find something interesting in React better than Angular, and vice versa. You find something interesting in Angular better than React. So that's something that you have to learn by your experience. But basically, like when you are creating Angular is like very famous if you are creating very large and scalable applications like So it's like if your application is more active and not like feature heavy, you can always go with Angular rather than another frameworks like React. So if your application is more feature heavy and it's dynamically changing, the best example is, let's get Facebook. Facebook is a React application, while PayPal is an Angular application. So you can see the difference, right? Facebook is like really dynamically updating, the variables are changing like continuously. So something like that, other technologies are more suitable. But you can go with Angular if your application is much more activity based. And also Angular is a framework, so there are already inbuilt tools in Angular. So if your company or if your group doesn't want to go with much more third-party integrations, I think the best solution will be Angular, because like for other frameworks, you must use some kind of third-party integrations. So it's a benefit if your application is really large and really long term, because like when the time changes, like these integrations might change, the updates are getting, so then you're gonna face problems like you don't have latest updates like stuff. So if you want to avoid those kind of problems, again, Angular is a little bit better solution, but be open-minded and try to learn both, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. And that's actually it was like more general in terms of that, without being biased towards Angular. You actually gave an answer to actually try it out and see what fits that person based on the use case. I think that's how most of the time we actually have to approach when learning new technologies as well. So I think let's actually wind it up if you guys don't have any questions for the speakers. So like there was a question like one thing in regards to the sessions that will be conducted. So the idea is to have like a couple of sessions per month, but since it's actually December and most of you guys are in the holiday spirit, we actually want to kick things off in the first week, take a short break, and then resume back on January. After January, things will be a bit more frequent than this. There won't be breaks, and we have to cover up all 10 sessions, and don't forget to attend it as well. So you guys have registered to it. We will be sending you, like Mr. Nushka mentioned, we'll be sending an email regarding all the details, all the links, and also the future events as well. But if you want to stay updated, you go ahead and look at our Ng-Srilanka page. All the latest updates will be posted there, including all the session schedules and whatnot as well. So let's actually wind things up. Mr. Indunil and Ms. Tinushika, thank you very much for taking your time and giving everyone a basic introduction to Angular, and also giving a very good crash course in terms of how you can get started with the project as well. So once again, if a quick reminder to everyone, if you want to connect to the speakers later on, or if you want to actually ask any further questions, ping us up on the Facebook chat, or if you want to actually ask the speakers directly, you can find them on LinkedIn. Probably the speakers could share their links on LinkedIn and you can connect with them as well. So thank you very much and see you guys next year.